What's up, comic book fans? And welcome to Comics Icons. Now, JJ, what they call me. And today, we got issue 3 of the new 4-part miniseries, The Sentry. And I'm going to tell y'all now that the end of this video builds up to one hell of an epic conclusion to this series. And if you guys need to get caught up on how we got to this point, I'll leave a card to the playlist up top, as well as a link at the end of this video. But when we left off last issue, this new Sentry, calling himself Ryan Sentry, showed up out of nowhere and helped the Avengers take down the UFOs. So if you guys are ready to see how Earth's mightiest heroes respond to this new Psycho Sentry, then you know what time it is. Let's get it. So we picked this issue up right after issue number 2 ended, and Ryan is introducing himself to the Avengers. But they're all skeptical. For one, this guy just shows up out of nowhere without warning. And 2, they all know how unstable the original Sentry was. Plus, calling himself Ryan Sentry kinda seems fanboyish. Not only that, but Captain Marvel actually recognizes him as Ryan Topper, and she knows that Misty Knight is looking for this guy at this very moment. But Ryan, he tries to make his case that he's here to help, and he's a big fan of theirs and just wanted to surprise them. So Wanda decides to look into Ryan's past after Captain America advises her to check for red flags. And instantly, a huge red flag presents itself when Ryan gets pissed as soon as Wanda tries to use her magic. And he screams at her that she doesn't have his permission to use magic on him, in which Tony immediately compares him to the original unhinged version. So now this intro isn't going quite well, which Ryan senses. So he decides to get up out of there while letting the Avengers know that he'll find a way to get them to trust him, that he'll save the world a dozen times if that's what it takes. So he takes off, but Carol Danvers still has more questions for him. Like first, how did he even get his powers? So she attempts to catch Ryan, but he's way too fast and he leaves Carol behind easily. But she notifies Misty Knight that she did actually make contact with her person of interest, and she chased him out into space. So then we transition over to Misty Knight and Jessica Jones at the Aberrant Crimes Division HQ. And they finally got access to the CCTV camera footage at Penn Station from a few months ago. And it's here where we see Mallory and Farhad and Ryan, along with Marv Chow and Rosalinda, along with a 6th person who's yet to be identified. But even then, we could tell that Ryan was an absolute douchebag. He's walking and texting and walks right into Mallory, who's in a wheelchair. And his response is, "Can't you see where I'm going?" But then we see a green energy wave releasing right in front of these guys, along with some masked, ghostly looking figure. And then this figure takes off his mask and releases the energy onto these 6 bystanders. So after watching the footage, Jessica mentions how strange all of this seems to be, which gives Misty the idea that maybe that's who they should be speaking to next, Doctor Strange. Maybe he can fill them in on this green glowing guy. Then we transition over to Mallory, who's flying along the northern coast of Honduras. Now she's still trying to come to grips with her powers and what she's capable of despite having cerebral palsy. And although she still doesn't quite believe in herself yet, she still wants to help people. And when she comes across people getting swept away in a flood, she quickly flies in to help. And she manages to scoop up this family and pile them onto a couch that she's able to fly to dry land. But unfortunately, she can't quite stop just yet. And she flies right into another home, completely destroying their living room wall. And now the flood is coming in straight into their home. She's pretty bad at this right now. Then we pick up at the Sanctum Sanctorium, with Misty Knight and Jessica Jones meeting up with Stephen and Clea Strange. And Misty and Jessica show them the CCTV footage from Penn Station. Then they ask Stephen and Clea about this mysterious glowing man that comes in and causes the Sentry's powers to end up in the hands of these random strangers. And Stephen seems to immediately recognize this being. Then Clea tells them that this being is a blasphemy cartel agent, a name which Misty thinks is completely made up. So Doctor Strange puts them up on game to who this guy is, and he says that the blasphemy cartel is made up of rogue agents from S.H.I.E.L.D.'s mystical division, WAND, led by Director Nunn, They wanted to control New York's mystical underworld by resurrecting dead superhumans, like Strange himself, who had been resurrected. Then he finishes. So Clea and I brought the fight to them in the Emerald City. So director Nunn decided to play hardball by reanimating the Sentry's body, possessed by 100 million insane ghosts. It took the merged entity of my wife and I to bring down the Sentry and the entire cartel headquarters. But then Clea adds that it was Steven's idea to show mercy to these minions, so they wiped their minds and placed them safely across the earth. But she never thought that one of them would get away, particularly one possessed by those evil spirits. So now Misty and Jessica are pissed, because this is basically a Doctor Strange caused problem. And what do people always say? The biggest threat to the multiverse is usually Doctor Strange. And Misty actually gets in Strange's face now because thanks to him, they now have 6 ticking time bombs roaming around the world with the power of the Sentry, including one who brought down an entire building in Harlem. So feeling the responsibility of this, Clea volunteers to help locate these sentries. So Clea uses her power mixed with the data from Misty's prosthetic arm and is able to locate these sentries, although she's only able to see 3 of them, even though Misty and Jessica are looking for 6. But we all as readers know from the past issues that Ryan actually already took out 3 of these guys. But Clea is able to identify the remaining ones, including the previously unidentified Denise Daria, who's in Toronto, Canada. And Misty then finds out that Denise works for Roxcom Canada, so she decides to pay her a visit. Meanwhile, Jessica decides to try her luck with Mallory, who's now in Denver. Then we pick up with Denise in Toronto, who's actually the CFO of Roxcom Canada. And we see that she's in her office and trying to get some work done. But she can't seem to focus right now because she hears so much commotion from miles away. So she decides to go quiet things down. And we see that the commotion was coming all the way from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So she was in Toronto, but distracted by noise all the way in Milwaukee. That's crazy. But she quiets the noise and gets back to work in seconds. Then later on, as she's now at home making some dinner, she sees a breaking news broadcast on the TV about a Chitauri attack in Malaysia. And again, within seconds, she flies over to deal with the trouble and then right back to finish her dinner. So although we can tell that she prefers to be alone and live her life, she still answers the call to help people. But this time when she gets back home, Ryan is sitting at her table. And it kind of makes you wonder, how come it is that Ryan seems to sense all these other sentries, but they don't seem to do the same? But Ryan asks her how come her house is still intact, despite her powers kicking in. Didn't you destroy anything? But she tells them that only a blow dryer is all that was really damaged. But then Ryan is hit with a mental attack. And at first Denise assures him that it's not coming from her. But then she hears the voices that seem to recognize her. And we see that it's the other sentries that Ryan absorbed. So they aren't dead, but they've actually been absorbed into his mind. And they recognize Denise as the other person from the train station. And she can actually see them projected from Ryan's mind, begging her for help. But once Ryan starts to gather himself, he doesn't like that Denise can see these guys and tells her that they've been haunting him and he can't get them to go away. And when Denise offers to help Ryan, he flips out and blows up her home. And once again, absorbs another sentry. Then takes off right before Misty could arrive. Not that she would have really been able to help much. This Ryan kid is an absolute problem. And he's OP right now. Sheesh. But then we transition back to Mallory, who's sitting on a sign in Denver, Colorado. And she's found by Jessica Jones, who flies onto the sign with her. And Mallory's first thought is that Jessica is here to take her in. But Jessica lets her know that that's not what she's there to do, although she does find it necessary to keep tabs on Mallory. But Jess comes to her like a friend and wants to know how she's holding up with this new life change. And she could tell that Mallory is kind of going through it right now. Then she lets Mallory know that her roommate Clara is worried about her, which Mallory already knows because she can hear her. But she can't go back to her normal life, which Jessica agrees with. But in this moment, Jessica seems to be just what Mallory needs. Someone who has a history with supers, as well as her own powers. So Jessica kind of understands Mallory and what she's going through. because Mallory is just scared of hurting someone or messing things up even worse than they are. She even tells Jessica that just an hour ago, she broke through a family's home by accident while rescuing people from a flash flood. But Jessica reminds Mallory that she didn't ask for these powers, that she doesn't have to use them to save people, but if that's something that she really wants to do, then she needs to be all in and accept that she's going to make mistakes. They all do. Jessica can tell that Mallory's heart is in the right place, and with some training from a mentor, she can get used to this line of work. So now Mallory is starting to feel a little bit better, and she lets Jessica know that it's actually pretty surreal that Jessica is there with her, because just last week, Mallory has submitted a frontline listicle at her job about the First Lady of New York's top 5 favorite places to eat. But then Mallory asks if Jessica could come with her to talk to her parents. And of course, Jessica tells her that she'll be right by Mallory's side. So as they leap off the sign, they're immediately cut off by a flash of light that drops them. And Ryan appears and says to Mallory, "You should have stayed on the moon." And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the issue. So, folks, how y'all feeling about this new Sentry story? I gotta admit, I wasn't quite sure at first, but it's kind of starting to get fired to me. So Ryan has been absorbing the other Sentries, and now they're stuck in his head, haunting him. That's crazy. And I wonder if they'll cause the Void to come out in the finale. But it definitely seems like the finale is about to be explosive. We'll probably get a showdown with Mallory and Ryan, but we'll probably also get to see the Avengers get involved too, which will definitely bring sparks, as well as Doctor Strange. And do you guys think that the absorbed Sentries will gain their forms back? Or will they ultimately lead to the Void coming out? Or will Mallory officially become the new Sentry? Or will Doctor Strange find a way to reverse it all? What do you want to see here, icons? But let me know what y'all thought about this issue too, and where you see the story going on from here. And as always, if you guys enjoyed this video and this channel, and you'd like to support the channel, then you could do so by joining the new Iconic Fan Club channel membership. With your membership, you'll gain access to weekly interactive live streams with yours truly in front of the camera, where we could talk about what's been going down in these issues, as well as ones you'd like for me to go over in the future and other comic book news as well. And we just actually had the first live stream debut this past week. Plus, you guys will get loyalty badges, member shout outs in these videos, and more. Or you could donate to the channel with a super thanks. And if you're not able to do that, then you can also help out tremendously by dropping a like, share, and subscribing to Comics Icons for more icons in the comic book world. But ladies and gentlemen, it's about that time. I'm out.